All right.
All right, meeting.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get it started. We've got, it's 12:29, so we can go ahead and just want to make sure that we know where we are, what we're working with, etc. Of course, as I've mentioned several times, we're going to be working ahead in the cases. And so like this Tuesday, we worked on case number 10. And so we're still kind of finishing up, taking a look at some of the files from the textbook. And as I've emphasized, we're going to work ahead in the cases so that we've got those things done. So once we work a case, upload the things, so you've got it taken care of. And that's because as we roll down to the end of the course, we're going to have I have some projects, you're going to have the finals and all that. So I'm trying to front load a lot of this, particularly the workshops. Now, when we ended up Tuesday, we had looked at that one file, that case that I went, and that was that case on Blue Sky. I see I got a question here. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. And yeah, I hope you get better. No problem at all. If you're ill and you think you might be contagious, I prefer you do it like this. Thank you. Okay, but we had we looked at Blue Sky, which is that file, that XLS10, and that was where we looked at working with receivables. We used the SUMIF, we used a VLOOKUP, and so that you could upload that for the case 10 workshop upload. There are 3 other files I want to run through, and they are in those practice files there for the Winston text, i.e. that is the Excel text. And the first of them is the makeup, and that's over in chapter 21 of the Excel Companion Content 1. So when you go over there, you'll want to grab that, and it's that is out of chapter 21, and we're going to be using we're going to be working with some date math, lookup functions, and the SUMIF just to continue on to build up. And also, as I've said before, I use these for you, so if you want to see a step-by-step process, you may do so. So it's chapter 21, it's the makeup file. We'll grab that, and I think it's in the practice files. It's makeup 2007. Yeah. So you'll want to download it to your desktop and paste it there so we can work on it. The other 2 files that we're going to look at are from chapter 3, and one of them is called, and one's from the practice files and one's from the template files. So we'll open that up. Each of these, they have these 3 different types of files in here loaded. I think they're pretty self-explanatory in terms of what they want. Let's see, I want from the practice files, that's the lookup. And again, we're looking at a particular function that we're using in Excel. Okay. And so I'm going to open that file up, and again, I'm going to save it on my desktop. And it's called lookup, and lookup case. No. We've got that file there, and I'll save it there. And I want I'll download, get this a bit out of the way here for a moment. And then we've also got a lookup template file. So go back there to those files and grab that. And that's going to be in chapter 3. And it's going to be called lookup template. Lookup temp. I'm going to copy that, save it on my desktop, and then go ahead and I'll open it up, save it and all that bit so we can work with them. Now, so what I'm trying to do, what I am doing, is combining some of the practical or typical business problems we deal with, and then we're using some software, as a way to procure the data to help us understand those problems and to present it. And again, that's why I'm giving you the combination of the book and then these cases that I've got where I give you some narrative of what's going on in the case, or so we have some information about the company. So I look up temp, I'm going to call that case 10. So any one of those files that you can load for case 10 is fine. And you say, what are you talking about? What do I mean? I'll show you one more time. These are the resource files. And on So on Tuesday, we looked at this Blue Sky Computer Services, that company, and their issue with accounts receivables. And then that's the file we use, is the XLS10. And that was in the files section over in Canvas. And then we're going to work on these, or take a look at these 3 today that deal with lookup and sum if functions and so forth. The first one, I'm going to get that back here, is the makeup, and that's over in chapter 21. When we go through these cases, you ought to have the book with you, so that you know what's going on in terms of the narrative behind that spreadsheet, what we're trying to get accomplished, etc. Now, I'm going to go back up here, and the text this is covered over in chapter 21. And so we'll go to chapter 21. Now, they start this chapter with a series of business questions. Okay? They give you this little scenario. I'm a sales manager for a makeup company, and they're asked to answer a series of business questions, or what would really be like a series of queries, if you would. What's the total value of merchandise sold by each salesperson? And you can see those questions there. Very typical of what you're going to run to in at work, and someone's going to want you to be able to produce the data and report it, present it to them. Now, I want to mention something about chapter 21. Chapter 21 covers the sum if function, the average if function, those two. I want to make certain that you understand what's going on. The sum if function says, okay, we check, it's a conditional statement. We check to see if a particular cell or meets our criteria. If it does, we add it into a group that meet the criteria. The sum if S means we have 2 criteria that we apply. That's the difference between them. The average if is the same story. If it meets a certain condition, we put it into a group of data and average it. And then the average if S means I'm working with multiple conditional statements. And you're going to see that when we work, and you saw that when we did the VLOOKUP, and then we did the sum if function on Tuesday. So as you see, these are just simply equals, if it meets the criteria, we add it in. If it doesn't, we move on. That's all that's going on. And the nice thing about Excel is it's going to give you a dialog box, and it's going to tell you how that all the data that you need to put in and what it means and why you're doing it. It also has a great help function. So we're going to look first of all at this makeup, okay? And I've got it in read-only formula, so I'm going to go ahead and save it to my desktop. Okay, on my PC on the desktop, and I'm going to copy. I'm just call it a copy of makeup, and I'll put it over here. Okay. So, if you were to ask me, okay, what do I upload for the credit for the workshop for XLS10? You've got your choice. This file that we worked on Tuesday, or any one of these 3 files, excuse me, that we're working on today. Okay? And if you want to see the narrative around them is there based in the textbook, and it will give you the steps and the story and what's going on. If you notice here, if you come down, and we're going down through the rest of chapter 21, look, the author's going to explain to you. First, the author starts with the syntax, and here it is. Sum if, range, okay? So where are the data at that I'm after? What's the criterion for selection, okay? And then I sum whatever is in that range that meets the criterion. So I just say if it matches if it meets a certain criterion, or condition, if you will, then I sum it, and I tell the range is where I get those data from. It's the same in terms of average if, any one of those, count if, and the authors walk you through that, giving you some of the background. Now they start to show us a practical example, okay, and they start with this question of, what's the total dollar amount of merchandise sold by each person? And then, as I mentioned in that resources file, they show you the whole kit and caboodle there in figure 21.1. Well, we're going to go down here and take a look at the file, okay? And again, I'm going to be working with the Makeup 2007 file. So I'm going to find it and take a look at it. There it is. Now, let's walk through this thing, and let's start first of all with the sales per salesperson. Okay, and that's going to be, click on cell B4. Now, this tells us how much Emily sold, and you'll notice, and let me do this up here in the toolbar. If you ever want to see, okay, where did they get those numbers? What are they referring to? Click in this in the toolbar there, and it's going to give you. It will give you colors, and it will identify the cell or range of cells that's involved. So notice something first, name, and you'll notice if you look at column H, there's the names. Okay. So that's the range. Then what's our criterion? Well, they give us A5, and you'll notice A5 is Emily. Okay? And then we have a comma, and then we have this area called dollars. And we go over to dollars, and that's the value, the numeric value that we're after. So anywhere that Emily is linked to dollars, we add that in. That's all that's going on. Nothing really hard about it. Now, what I always like to do is this. I like to click on the function, insert function dialog box, and you click on that little FX and it'll show you. Now look what we've got. We've got the range, okay? And you could use this to either reverse engineer something someone sent you or to build your own. Excel has set up these functions so that they'll walk you through them. And look, they also have a link to help. And frankly, I think I gave you guys a resource. It's called Easy Excel. If you go out there, they'll show you how to do just about anything with Excel. And if you go over and you look in YouTube, you're going to find tons of stuff where people will show you how to use these functions. Let's look at this, and this is the SUMIF function, and the range is name, okay? And so you'll see those names there, and that's because we had taken, we used the name manager, and we identified an area as name. And I'll show you that we did that. And we'll just go up here and I'll click on formulas. I'll click the name manager and you'll see the name in there. That's why every chance you get, use the name manager, because by doing so, you're looking at words that a human understands. You're not just dealing with cell referencing. I can't emphasize that enough. Now, we'll go back and we'll take a look at this. And then we've got the criteria is A5, excuse me. A5 is Emily. Follow me? So we're going to go through the name range. And every time we see Emily, we say, okay, this is one we want to add up. Got me? See, it can't be this easy. Trust me, it is. Okay? The problem for most people is that they don't understand it's this easy, and they won't use the aids and the function they won't use the function dialog box like they should. They just make it more complicated than it should be. Now let me stop for a moment and just simply say this. Excel has 200 or 300 functions. The functions that you use on a consistent basis will depend a whole lot on where you work and what you do. You say, for example, if you're a if you're a finance major, chances are you'll be working on a spreadsheet application, and probably a souped up Excel, maybe something that's out there commercially, but you'll be working with time value of money functions, those kinds of things primarily. If you're working in something like sales, it's likely you'll use something like this, where we're kind of using Excel like a database. We're saying, look up everything in that range there of the name range, and if you find Emily, that's a flag, and so we want to add that up. So we have A5, which is Emily, and then you'll notice in the sum range, we've got that dollars, and it will give us all of those dollar values, and then it gives us the sum. Okay? Again, I always do this. I like to do two things. First, I click in the formula bar. I check to see if this makes any sense. And let's see if it does. So I've got the name, okay, the person, and I've got a criterion range, see the blue shading. And then, and do I have a criterion? Yeah, A5, it's Emily. And then I say, okay, I want to get their sales data. And so I select dollars, and see the dollars is itself with another shading. So Excel will give you lots of visual cues about what's going on and what you're doing. And then you just drag and drop it. You see that? Anybody out there that might not see it, shoot me a message. But again, the toolbar is designed when you click in it to show you all the cells that are involved and to identify whatever operation you're doing, unless you use an operator, say like a multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Okay? So we've got that figure for Emily, and so we know her sales. And then we just simply come down and notice that A6 would be Halogen, then Ashley. Notice this is a very The sum if function is a highly effective function. Most people in one way will use it. Certainly if you're working with things like marketing data, you'll want to do this. Now, notice that we set this all up by using the name manager. Okay? And chapter 21 in the textbook, in that first figure 21.1, walks you through and shows you what that file looks like. And then shows you the syntax for the sum if function. And you'll notice when we started chapter 21, I'll go back up here. I'm going to scroll right back up. Notice all these questions. Okay? Notice that we've got the total dollar amount of merchandise sold by each salesperson, how many units returned, the total dollar amount of sales in or after 2005, on and on and on. That would probably be the kind of thing you'd get over the phone or an email, and your boss would say, here's a list of stuff I want to see. Okay? And that would be, then you'd start to do your work, and for each of those, you'd get the data, produce a result, and then you'd be in a position to display the data. You say, what are you talking about here? Well, let's go back for just a moment, and we'll look at this set of data. Now, here I'm looking at my salespeople, okay? And I've been asked to produce how much do they sell? Okay? This could be, I don't know, I've got 10 here maybe. I could have 50, I could have 100, I could have 1,000. So now I need a visual cue to help me make some kind of category or criterion for them. You got me? Simple is always better. So what you could do would be to just very simply, and we'll try to sort these and see if it's going to play nice with us or be nasty. So I'm just going to come over here, okay, and I'm going to highlight cells A4 down to B13, and I'm going to click on home, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do sort and filter, and I'm going to do a custom sort. And the custom sort, I'm going to sort them by dollar volume, largest to smallest. Now let's see what will happen. And make sure you have it clicked up there. My data has headers. Let's see what we get. Now, I've collected the data. Okay. I've got how much each person has sold. And now my next step is I've put it into a format that someone else can make an evaluation of. Data is worthless until it becomes information. And it only becomes information when it's presented in a way that is actionable. You say, what do you mean by actionable? I'll give you an example. I'm looking at this list of salespeople. The question is, okay, when I did the sort, I did it from largest to smallest. Why? Well, I want to see who's the top salesperson. If I was interested in looking to see who was the least productive salesperson in terms of sales, I could use the least to the greatest. So I had a strategy there in terms of my work. And I can see here I've got, Jen, Betsy, etc. With me? I can go a little step further. Down there in cell A14, let's put the word total, make it all caps so it stands out. All right. And then I'm just going to use the sum, the auto sum. Okay. And you say, where are we going to? Well, I'm going to say percent of total sales. So I can put this into some kind of relative meaning. And I'm going to do this. This is going to equal, and I'm going to put B5. Now I'm going to stay in column B, so I'm going to put a $ sign in front of it, okay? And then that's going to be divided by, and I'm going to come down here to cell B14, and I'm going to make that all, and the F4 function will do that. I'm going to make that a pure absolute function, a pure absolute cell reference. Now, I don't like what I see here, so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to reduce the decimals. And I'm going to come over 2 places. I might go 3. Let's just stick it at 2. And then I'm ready to come down and drag and drop. Okay. In fact, I stopped too soon there, so I'll just bring this on down as well. Now, just to make sure that I've done okay, I'm going to come down here and total all those percentages, and they should give me a 1.00. Now, if I want to, just to make sure somebody doesn't get confused that these are anything, I've got the percentage total that telegraphs to the user what I've got going on. I'm working with percentages, but just for grins, I'm going to go ahead and use the percent style. Okay, and I'll do the same thing at the bottom and the RWB. To make it even look a little bit nicer, I'm going to go ahead and put those. Center those. Got me? Now, I've got some information. I know who my top salesperson is. I take that and I apply a ratio. I create a ratio. And when you remember when we did the accounting ratios, I said ratios wash data. They clean them up. They take out distortions. So what we've done is we've taken the possible distortions created by maybe the size of a territory one of them has, etc., and I put it into context by using the percentage total. Got me? So I've got a cluster of people here, and I'm going to do one other final thing. I'm going to put my cursor on D5, and I'm coming all the way down here to D13. And I'm going to use our old friend conditional formatting. Okay? Now I could use some data bars if I wanted to do that. I'm going to use color scale. And I'm going to use the first one where green is good, yellow, then red. Now, this helps us see some of the demarcations between these folks. Now, if you look there, you've got differences of 1%. So the next thing I'm going to ask myself is, okay, well, if it's percentage differences, what kind of dollar differences do I have? And if you look there, you're going to see, let's take Jen and Betsy. There's what, maybe $750 between the two of them? So if I want to even carry these out to 3 or 4 digits, I could do that. I'm not seeing too much of an appreciable break. And then even when I start to get from that bright green down to the more of a lime green, and then that yellow, and then it starts to turn to the red, I'm just not seeing that much difference between them. So if I'm going to reward the top salesperson, that's easy, except for the fact that that my top 3 people between them, there's about there's $750 or $700 between the difference between them. They're all kind of jammed up there, so that's going to be tough. Somebody could say, well, the differences of territory. Numbers of customers, I was sick one week, on and on and on. But at least I have some information I can work with. You everybody see that? So it's a pretty methodical process. And the whole thing gets set up when we use the functions and we organize the information in a way that we can make some sense of it. So I know who my top salesperson is. I know who was sold the least. So I can answer that question. let's look over here for a moment, and we have this thing called units returned, okay? And this apparently would be how much of a certain item they sold, okay? And then we're returned. Now click on cell B16. And look, I'm looking at this fairly cold. I don't rehearse this stuff. And so I'm going, okay, I'm looking at this. Okay, where do I head? Well, here's a pathway for me to start to say, okay, what am I looking at? I've got this thing called units return. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click in the formula bar. Now I know I'm dealing with sum if, so I know that I'm working with a conditional statement. If it meets a certain criteria, if it's in a certain range and it meets a certain criterion, I either count it, I sum it, I average it, whatever, put it into an average. So I've got equals sum if, and then you'll see the thing called units. And if you look over there at column K, those are the units. Got me? Now again, the name manager. If you're going to be doing stuff on a repetitive basis, okay, then you're going to want to use the name manager. Now, understanding this is good because let's say, for example, you go to work for a big company and they say, well, you know, we kind of use Excel as a desktop item, but here's really what we use to generate reports. You should at that point have enough confidence to say, okay, I kind of get this. And most of the commercial applications that are out there will say, okay, choose the variables that you want and plug them in and away we go. The closest to that will be in Excel will be when we work with the pivot tables. Okay. Now, again, that column for the units is blue, and we're saying, all right, we're going to add it to a sum if, okay, the units have less than 0, okay, and you'll notice some of them do. They're going to be less than 0 because they were returned. Here's the logic of what's going on. Let's say I have 100 units. I sell them. The customer returns 10. I count that as a negative 10 because I thought I had sold 100, but I only really sold 90. But I have 10 returns. So how I account for those returns there is I just put a negative value in front of it. And then once I have that negative value, I can multiply it times dollars to see, okay, how much in dollar volume was returned, that type of thing. Does that make sense? Okay. So I've got that. And if I'm still kind of shaky about it, well, what's going on? I do this. I'll click on the insert the function and I'll look at the dialog box and I'll say, okay, it's the range. And they'll define that for me there. What's the criterion? It's the condition or the criteria in which you'll say, okay, it meets the condition I'm after. And then the sum unit, sum range, we choose them. That's all that's going on. And we find here that we've got 922 units we have returned. Now, we've got a little bit different critter when we look at cell B17, okay? Here we're working with the date function. And let's look at this for just a minute. It's equals sum if date is greater than or equal to 1/1/2005. And so we want to put in the dollars. This goes back to the question that we were asked. And let me find that. What's the total dollar amount? Here it is. What is the total dollar amount of sales in or after 2005? Well, we're going to find that out. So I'm going to click the toolbar, in the formula area, for the formula bar, excuse me, and it's going to say, okay, date. And the date's the color blue. Okay, I've got the dates there. And if the date's greater than 1/1/2005. Now, you remember when we did the blue sky thing and we computed the number of days outstanding, we saw that a date is really a number. We have it formatted for us so we're comfortable with it. For example, today is March the 7th. There's going to be some people who put 03/07/2019. There will be some people who put 3/7/19. There'll be some people who put 03, they'll put 03/07/19. You get my drift. So here we're going to say, okay, if it's equal to or greater than a particular date that is past the very first day, equal to the first day or beyond the first day of 2005, I'm going to sum those dollars, and the dollars are over there in column L, and they're all lit up for me. So, and I'm going to tell you this, I've been working with Excel since it was invented. And I still sometimes, when I'm dealing with something like this, I sit down and write a piece of paper. I get all my data put together and arranged. And then I sit down and say, okay, if I'm going to do a sum if for a particular condition, I'll write that out before I go to the dialog box. And if I look at something that doesn't look right, I go back and I can tweak it. But I've got these tools that will walk me through the process. And in the end, if I'm really having trouble with it, there's always help on this function. You can click that and they'll take out and show you, and Microsoft will give you an example. So we've got that. The question was, how much have we sold starting at and beyond 2005? Well, there we are. And notice something. Down in B17 is the display. Up above it is the formula bar. The formula bar that shows you the formula that you've inputted to get the display. Okay? These tools, like Excel, like Access, are designed to give you layers of views. Okay? So I can see the display value, and then I can see how I got that value. We're doing another one of those. Here's the question is, how many units of lip gloss did we sell? And notice it says equals sum if the product, which is in the blue, that's column J, and it fits lip gloss, then we count the number of units. And units is column K. See that? You say it couldn't be this easy. It truly is. Now, the hard part of this becomes when I have these data, and then I've got to try to make some decisions on the basis of them. And that's right here, we're just kind of answering some factual questions. If you take a look up at chapter, if you go back to the textbook, and you look there in those first set, your bosses just come in and basically ask you for some factual types of data, nothing where you've made a decision. What's the total dollar amount? How much was sold when, etc. The hard part will be if I have to make a decision on the basis of this, like, do I keep 3 salespeople or do I let them go, etc. The dollar value of the lip gloss, the same story. Now, if I'm looking at B19, okay, and I've got the dollar value of the lip gloss, that's nice to know how much I sold. I think somewhere here in the case it would tell me what period of time I sold that, what year or what quarter or whatever. And then I'd say, okay, well, how does that compare to last year? How does that compare to last quarter? And then I could use like the linear trend when we worked with it of, okay, how do I project forward to say, predicting what I'm going to do with it? How much will I sell next year based on what I've sold? That's when we did the linear trend. Yes? No? Anybody have a question about what we've looked at so far? You're awfully quiet. Well, the desperation may set in when you do a hands-on exam. Maybe not part of an exam. I hope not. This is just kind of like a grand tour of some if. Let's look at cell B21, and you got something a little bit different. Okay. Equals sum if S. When you see that, it means we've got multiple conditions. Let's look at this for just a moment. We're going to look at dollars and name, gin, product, and lipstick. I'm going to click on here, and all three columns go hot. We want to know how much gin sold in dollars in terms of product and lipstick. Apparently the lipstick. Okay? So now we're using multiple criteria, the name gin and lipstick. No biggie. Now this doesn't do much for me until I come to the point where I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, I might run a whole column of this where I compare how much lipstick's sold by everybody. And I could just simply take the formula and work it through. But I need to come to this point first and have my ducks lined up and be ready to go. Here's another one where we're looking at average units of lipstick that are sold, not the dollar value, but the average number. And we look at any where we have sales of greater than 50. And again, we're using the multiple criteria. Now, again, this is a pretty simplistic case, but as I showed you earlier on when we looked at these salespeople, their dollar volumes, okay, if we had to say, okay, who would I let go? All right. I have a problem on my hands because there's not much difference between these people. And if they are salespeople, say in a distribution situation, I've got to try to figure out, okay, let me give you an example. If gin has a dollar volume of 29 grand off of 2,000 customers, and Christina has 23 grand off of 150 customers, who do you think is really the salesperson who's doing best? You got to take a look at that, especially when you're managing distributions, sales, numbers of sales that people have. That's really tough when you go to evaluate sales and marketing people, because the numbers, you have to have as many numbers and guides as you can possibly get, and you have to really clean things up to get a composite picture of what that person's got. If somebody has, let's say they're one of these distributors out here hauling soda around or hauling beer around, those drivers get paid probably, they probably get some kind of a standard base level, and then they probably get something on the basis of how much stuff they sell. Well, if somebody has a really excellent route, they're going to do pretty well. If somebody has a pretty bad route, they won't do so well. And so the question is, well, who is the better salesperson? That's kind of a tough call. So here you can see we'd have a difficult time making that decision. And this one, We're going to look to see any places where it looks like that Jen had less than $100 of sales in lipstick. And there are the columns. And the H column is the name, J is the product, and L is the numeric amount. And so, okay, we want to check that one maybe. Then average units by Jen. And we're picking on Jen because Jen is our top salesperson. Okay. If I was involved in a situation, like I mentioned before, say where I have people who are delivering things, say like soda or beer or the bread man or lady or the chip person, whatever. I'm also going to want to have a map of their territory. I'm going to want to know how concentrated are all of their stops. This is also the same that like people like folks like FedEx or UPS or even the United States Post Office in terms of trying to evaluate how well a particular driver is functioning or how well they're performing. If you have somebody who has a lot of time between their stops, unless they're making big deliveries per stop, they're not going to look that great. If you got a person in a concentrated residential area and they're within a 5-mile radius and they're making all these drops, that's an easy territory to work through. So that's the type of thing that we try to get at. In fact, again, as I come over here, I could do some more work with conditional formatting, I could do that, or I could do some more work in terms of maybe putting together a chart. If you take a look at the sum if rows, click on that, and there's I'll see if I think I might have a question. Let me pop up here for a sec. Thought I had a question there. Pop this down for a sec. Nope, thought it did. Click on the tab called Sum If Rows. Now this one just shows us sales by quarter, total sales in the first and second quarter. Pretty simple example. The one that's probably more useful for you is the data example there. So over here, I might take these and do some work with them in terms of I would probably work with the dollars and the units in terms of doing some sorting and filtering. If I was interested in sales for a given time period, I could do that as well. Let's take your cursor for just a second and put it on G4 and come on down over to, let's see, go all the way down to L. Got a bunch of them here. I'm coming out of here. Ooh, we have a bunch. My goodness, we got 1,000 of these. I'm going to highlight this whole area. Oh my goodness. You see what I'm talking about? Now you understand why it's nice to use a drag and drop and have that capability. Then to go ahead and name the whole thing. This whole area is not given a name. No idea how many they had. Wow, look at that. Whoa, they've given us a bunch. There we are, finally, 1,900 of them. Okay, now I'm going to click up here on sort and filter, and I'm going to click filter, okay? And you'll notice that every one of these, the transaction number, the name, the date, the product, the units, of the dollars, I've got a little filter drop-down menu. And if I'm just interested in, say, a particular date, all right, I'll just pop this baby on here, and I can search by the date. Okay. I can put a date filter. And they've got these filtered out right now by years. So let's just unselect that, and let's just take 2004. And I have all the sales for 2004. I could go back, and then I could come down and get that sum if I wanted to, or copy and paste this whole bit over to see 2004. Then I could do that for 2005, etc. And then I can just clear the filter, and we're back to where we were. We're probably gonna have to clear it for every one of them. No, we can always just go back up here and back it out. Doesn't matter. Not that big of a deal. Okay. Now, that's another one, if you want to, that you can use to upload for the workshop, okay? A little bit different. And so you could upload it. Now we've got a couple of others here. And one of them is the lookup, and these are from chapter 3. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at those for a minute. Let's go over into the text. Now, you always need to have your text. If you really want to get the true benefit from this, if you don't bring your text with you to class, you're just wasting your time. Because when we get to some of these cases where they give us some narrative, that's probably going to make a whole lot more sense to you than just sitting and watching a video or sitting in class and listening. And again, here they're going to give us the VLOOKUP. One of the reasons I give this also so you could say, well, have you got a text or something that shows me about the VLOOKUP other than just what you do in those cases? Well, that's what this is. And they show us the syntax of the VLOOKUP, okay? And we get the lookup value, the table, the range, the column, and the index. So we're going to work with a couple of those cases there. And let's start with the lookup XLS, and that's going to be in chapter 3, figure 3.1. So I want to find out the lookup, just the XLS. And I'll look up there here. Find this jewel. Well, let's do the lookup temp. I probably didn't download or not seeing it. Okay. Now this one's over in figure 3.2. So it's over in chapter 3. It's a template. And let's take it. Now what they've done here is they've created a template to do some lookup work. And notice they've got they've got income and a tax rate, okay? And what the tax rate is per income. And then they have a true or false criteria to see if what we've got is correct. And we've got the income, and then we have the rate, excuse me. And then they show us also over here a template where we can work with prices. So it's somewhat useful. Probably what's more realistic is the one we just got through doing. That's going to give you a bit of, well, it's just got a little bit more meat on the bones to work with. Okie dokie. Now, I want to make sure that we're all on cue for what's going on. And you've got the view text, that's due. And you should have already uploaded the XLS7. And then, of course, we've got those quizzes and exams. Then we're going to come into next week. And we've done 9 already, so that should be taken care of. And you've got, let me see if you had a exam. No. And then we'll be headed into spring break. I'm going to stop for a second, see if anybody has a question I could try to help you with. Anybody in here or out there? Now, let me say this. There are 34 to 36 people enrolled in this course. I'm looking at 14 people total, combination of folks out there and in here. And for this to work, people have to show up for the ground-based session. If it becomes a situation where I'm having this level of absenteeism, or I don't check tomorrow and I see a whole bunch of people who logged in and viewed it, I'm probably going to have to go back to just a regular class format, which means if you miss a class, you lose points. I really don't want to do that, but I got to get everybody's attention to make sure that when I go in there tomorrow morning and I take a look, by noon, everybody has seen this video, has logged in and seen it, or you've logged in today. That's the only way I can make this work. This is something I'm trying to work through with the administration. If you prefer to all sit in here or lose points if you can't be here, that's fine. I can accommodate you there as well, okay? So I'm going to shut it down now because we got about 20 minutes left, and I'm not sure what I'm going to need to do, but I'll have to check tomorrow morning, and then I'll check next week, and if I'm in that situation, then over spring break, I'll have to change the format. I don't see any choice. I can't justify doing this if I can't sit down with the dean or my colleagues and say, here it is. Now, you may think you want to go back to the way it was. You may find that it's a little better this way, but that's your choice. Thanks, folks. I'm going to end this, and have a good weekend.